Hello everybody, good morning and welcome to the United Stands. I'm Mark Goldbridge and this is your latest Manchester United news this Sunday morning. A little bit late this morning than usual, but I'll explain why in a moment. Some of you already know, but lots to get into. You always get interesting stories on a Sunday morning, different journalists, different outlets. Well, maybe a bit of a shock around the striker situation. Mathys Tel is still linked to Man United in the summer, but now Harry Kane. A bit of a setback on Gyökeres. We'll talk about how that links into Harry Kane as well. Also, very interesting from Fabrizio Romano that INEOS missed out on 2 January transfer targets that they were talking to in December, but they backed off in January because there was no money. Douglas Luiz and Kuna at Wolves. So look, money coming into it again. I want to talk about that and how and why we're not having these conversations, and yet it's holding us back, this lack of money. Also, a very interesting stat. Remember to remind me to talk about that because that's very interesting. So lots to get into on the show this morning. Thanks for your patience. I did say last night I wouldn't be live at 10 o'clock today. I was actually out in the freezing cold watching my lad Seb play in a match today. He did get man of the match, but they did get beaten, which I think is a message to anybody in professional sport that no matter what is going on around you, it doesn't have to bring your performance levels down. And I think Seb and a couple of the other players showed that today, that no matter how the result is going against you, you can still be responsible for your own good performance, which is, I think, something Manchester United could learn as well. And also, I find it absolutely incredible watching 2 teams play under-8s football and ping the ball around first touch passing in a competitive game, and Man United can't do it. And don't talk to me, well, it's a higher standard. A first-time pass and getting the ball out your feet quickly should be a standard at even pub football that Man United can't seem to master at the moment. It's absolutely incredible, and it must be infuriating for Ruben Amorim. But look, let's get into the show this morning. Lots to get into. It's Super Bowl day as well. I'm proper excited for that. If you're going to be part of the Goldbridge Super Bowl cult this evening, we're live from 11 o'clock on That's Football all the way till about 4 o'clock in the morning. I look forward to this stream so much. Can't wait for that. Anyway, back to the football. And this is what we're talking about. So let's start off with the striker situation at Manchester United. So we know we've been linked to Gyökeres. We know that there is this story that Tel at Spurs, even though he's on loan at Spurs, would still like a move to Manchester United. The latest addition, and obviously Osimhen is sort of floating around there as well. The latest addition is actually Harry Kane. Now, a lot of British outlets Sunday morning are talking about this. Its origins are actually Germany. And apparently Harry Kane has a £54 million release clause activated. I think it's this summer. It might be January. And that is causing some conversation in Germany about whether somebody might take up that Harry Kane release clause, in which case Gyökeres becomes a target for Bayern Munich. So it's not necessarily that Man United would go for Harry Kane, but it's potentially that Harry Kane could head back to the Premier League, having won the Bundesliga. I mean, he's not going to win anything else at Bayern Munich. Like they're nowhere near winning the Champions League. So he wins a trophy in Germany and then heads back for next season. Maybe Spurs, maybe another club, maybe Manchester United. But then that prompts Bayern Munich to go for Gyökeres. And I think it's just a word. Look, I want to try and be upbeat here, but I think it's just a word of warning around the striker for Manchester United, that there are still aspects of our ex-player community, the media, and certainly some of our fan base that think with that football club that can just go, let's get Gyökeres, let's get Osimhen, and not actually respect the fact that better clubs than us are also looking for strikers in the summer. I mean, Chelsea are crying out for a striker. Arsenal desperately need a striker. Bayern Munich may well be looking for a striker as well. We are way down that list in getting the best strikers available. And there won't be an endless list of those strikers. Okay, there's Sesko, there's Osimhen, there's Gyökeres, but all 3 of those could end up going to different clubs. And what are we left with then? And I think this feeds into what a lot of people are sort of waking up to, that we are a football club, as we were talking about last night. What is the way back? What is the way back? And the naivety of, oh yeah, let's just get Gyökeres and everything will be fine. I mean, I might just drop this in here on a Sunday morning. I actually think I'm going to say it. The people out there, and the media feed into this massively as well, but I'd expect it from them because they're majority morons. Have you noticed how it feels like the story around Man United at the moment? I mean, bloody Pratthurst in the Manchester Evening News never shuts up about it. It's the striker obsession. It's the whole Man United just need a striker and everything's going to be okay. Get Bob Marley on. Everything is going to be all right. It's not. I genuinely don't think the striker is the problem at Man United. I think we need an experienced striker. I think that's very obvious. But it's almost like the story being sold is get Harry Kane, get Gyökeres, get Osimhen, Man United will climb up the league. And I'm like, oh God, this is just basic. This is so basic. It's like saying, my life's really miserable. I'm depressed. I have no, I get no enjoyment from life. Give me £1 million and I'll be happy. Well, maybe, but you've got to do something with that £1 million. £1 million in your bank account's not going to make you happy. You've got to still, it's not going to buy you friends. They're going to be fake. It's not going to buy you a life if you can't find anything that's happy. And I feel like that about Man United on a striker. There's people out there just selling this. Oh, if we get Gyökeres, everything will be fine. And I'm like, it's been going on for 7 years. 7 years we've not created chances for a striker. It's not always been Xerxes or Rasmus or Rashford. It's been Cavani, it's been Ronaldo, it's been Martial. 7 years we've not been a team that can create chances for our striker. And yet we're still... I sometimes wonder, like, where Man United are, how much of it as a percentage... I mean, the vast majority is the ownership, but how much of it is because of the volume of stupidity reporting around our football club that send the story the wrong way? And the striker is not the problem at Manchester United. The striker doesn't get the team to build out from the back without booting it aimlessly long. The striker doesn't get the team to be able to play quick first-time passes. The striker doesn't get the team to be good at set pieces or defending corners. The striker doesn't get the team to pick up the runners. The striker doesn't get the team to mark people on the edge of the box for cutbacks. Like, the striker is very important, but I feel like if we had £100 million in the summer, people would gamble it all on Gyökeres. And I'm like, look, I might be in the minority, get in the comments, but I think we need a striker. But I've seen enough of Man United over the last 7 years to go, that could just end up being a good striker up front like Cavani was with very little service. And I don't see that as necessarily the solution. Keel Robinson says we should go for Son on a free. Jonathan David on a free, investing more elsewhere, says Joseph. What I don't understand is even if the Glazers are cash cow, Sir Jim is a tycoon, surely he knows you have to speculate to accumulate, or is his hands tied by Joel, says Martin Saunders. There's an interesting theory on the INEOS. I'll come back to that because I think it's a good, it's a £10 super chat from Martin and it deserves a longer answer and it sort of feeds into something else I want to talk about as well. However, I also want to bring this in. This is from Fabrizio Romano. So we're talking about the striker situation, but this is brand new this morning as well. This is from Fabrizio Romano. Manchester United acquired about the signings of both Douglas Luiz and Cunha from Wolves in December, but they never followed it up in January as they didn't have the money. That's from Fabrizio Romano. So I don't know whether that story is meant to make us feel positive or pissed off. I would verge towards the pissed off because I look at this ever-growing gap between Manchester United and the teams we want to be. Arsenal, Liverpool, Man City, Chelsea. And I look at those clubs and they do make moves and they are at the end, they're in the top four or they're close to it. I look at Man United and I look at stories like that from credible, reputable people like Fabrizio Romano. And I look at the two players we're looking at and I go, do they instantly improve us? Yes. Luis is Premier League proven and he's better than everybody in our midfield, probably apart from Ugarte. In relation to that pivot, he's 10 times better than Bruno, isn't he? Because Bruno's not that player. I look at Cunha, I can't pronounce his name properly. Does he make us better in the two players behind the striker or even as a false nine? Yeah, I think he can do that role. So if we'd have added those two players in January, I'd be a lot more confident about the end to the season and the future. So Man United, obviously target these two players. Well done. Obviously, Amorim's on board with that. Fantastic. And then we don't get them because we can't afford it. And I think this is something that it's almost again like it gets swept under the carpet. On the one hand, Man United are approaching players they need and then can't follow it through because they don't have any money. On the other hand, we're being linked with £70 million strikers in the summer. Where's that money coming from? And it's like this frustrating, repetitive bullshit around Man United that generates this cycle of hope and failure. And at some point, you've got to acknowledge it and see it for what it actually is, which is a cycle that will never change until we do something about it. And I read this tweet today and I thought it was absolutely spot on, but I'll start off with, I saw it, you know, like Andy Mitten, who has got the fanzine United We Stand on Sky quite a lot, good connections with the club. He was on an interview. I saw a clip of his interview on Saturday night. Remember, this was the person who said that he'd been told by previous managers that Marcus Rashford had been an issue for a long time. So he was talking about the current Man United situation. And he was saying, look, the ticket price rises aren't going to go down very well. They're not. But he was also, I don't know whether he was defending INEOS. I mean, might have good connections with Sir Jim. I don't know. He had an interview with him, didn't he? You don't want to, certain journalists don't want to burn bridges, that's for sure. And I would class him more as a journalist. So maybe, you know, he's got to be wary of that, how he speaks to people. Otherwise, he won't get those connections. But he was basically saying that the money's run out at Manchester United after 10 years of buying the Alexis Sanchez's of this world, where it's just, you know, absolutely gone completely wrong, but also financially wrong. Man United still owe hundreds of millions of pounds on transfers. Like people say, let's spend £100 million on a striker. We're definitely going to be spending £100 million on transfers that we've already made, because that's the way we've structured our business. And he was basically saying, look, because of the Glazers, the money has run out, and INEOS are now having to make difficult decisions. And I instantly had to stop myself and go, it would be so easy to fall into that story. Like, we are where we are because of the Glazers, and INEOS have come in and it's a thankless task. The club is broke and INEOS really want to spend money, but they haven't got any money because the Glazers have made these mistakes. And now we've got to sack good people and we've got to raise ticket prices, and it's nobody's fault other than the previous regime because INEOS have got to do it. And then I stop myself and I go, hold on a minute. I'd love to just have an answer here to Andy Mitten and everyone else and say, I understand that. Great point. But INEOS put us in this position as well because they chose to do a deal with the Glazers and rescue them. Now, Andy, if you were a billionaire, would you bail the Glazers out as a Man United fan, knowing what they've done to this football club? You don't need to answer it. It would be a no. Would I do that? Absolutely not. Would any Man United fan in this room bail out the Glazers and help them stay in charge? No Man United fan would do it. Unless it was, well, 25% of something is better than nothing. But a proper Man United fan would never have bailed the Glazers out. So when we hear about INEOS and their cost cutting because of the Glazers, remember, they didn't have to bail the Glazers out. And also, remember, we're talking in the past tense, like INEOS are doing this because of the Glazers and their mistakes. Mate, the Glazers are still here. They still own the football club. We're talking in the, oh, it's the Glazers' fault we're in this position. They're still here. Joel Glazer still has to sign everything off. We need to stop pretending that the mistakes of the last 10 years, which were the Glazers' fault, and INEOS are putting them right. INEOS are not putting anything right because anything they say still has to be signed off by, guess what, a Glazer. This propaganda is actually convincing people of a scenario that's not real. We're only in this position because INEOS bailed the Glazers out, and INEOS are not fixing anything without the Glazers say so. It's a weird scenario. And you get this approach for Kuna, and you get this approach for Douglas Luiz, and they will be players that would make us better, and they are players that Amorim would want, but we can't do it because we haven't got any money. And that ain't going to change. And also, these people could put money into the football club. They definitely could. But look, I want to read this tweet out because I thought it was so good. So good. And I don't even know if this person follows me. They probably don't. I hope they don't, actually. They do. Well, they've only got 39 followers, right? Praveen Falconey on Twitter basically says this. And listen to this. I'm struggling to find out or figure out why we're in the worst position we've ever been in on the pitch, and we're in the worst position we've ever been off the pitch. We literally can't. And if you're just tuning in, Fabrizio Romano has said that Man United approached Cunha and Douglas Luiz in December, but backed off because they couldn't afford it. So we brought this manager in with this new style of football that we need to build around. Even Ryan Giggs has come out and said, I like this manager, but you've got to give him the players. Everybody knows it. Your garden hedge knows it. Like, everybody knows Amorim needs players, right? So Man United approach players in December, but can't buy them in January because there's no money. Like, we need to have this conversation. Why is there no money in this football club? And why is it acceptable that there's no money in this football club? And why is it not on the front of every newspaper? Because they're all bloody part of the propaganda. And this was a brilliant tweet. And this just shows you can have Sky Sports News, TNT, Fox, all these multi-billion corporations, and they will not report the truth. And yet you've got an account with 40 followers on Twitter saying this. Accounts, journalists, or even ex-players who claim certain accounts are fake fans using United to grow and spreading hate are often the ones committing these acts themselves. These behaviour reflects a projection of their betrayal of the club onto others to shift the spotlight. 1. Spreading hate and false narratives. Accounts posing as Man United fans engaging spreading hate and false narratives. They discredit fans who question these narratives by labelling them as troublemakers. This creates division among the fan base. These accounts defend specific players when criticised for poor performance by bringing up unrelated points. These tactic leads to petty arguments, distracting from the discussion about the team's overall subpar performances, both on and off the pitch. Misdirecting discussions. They frequently steer conversations away from their intended topics, despite the fact that common sense could resolve these discussions easily. Many people engage with and amplify these issues, blowing them out of proportion. Ignoring simple questions. There are many straightforward questions that fans asked which are ignored or deflected. Instead of addressing these accounts focus on picking ex-players from other clubs who are performing decently in lower leagues, using this to slander fans who criticise these players for not being a good fit for Man United. They use these to criticise current United players, managers, or even the club itself. This deflection avoids confronting the consistent source of the chaos and failure, namely the Glazers, who are now supposedly backed by Sir Jim from INEOS. And I thought, you know what? That's probably the most sense I've read in a few paragraphs about the issues in this fan base. Every time you try and have a conversation about why we're in this position, if I try it, it will be, you're a Forest fan, you're doing it for money, you're up Rasmus's arse, you hate Rashford. You know, all false narratives that will cause some people to jump on and go, yeah, I hate him, he is a Forest fan, or I hate him, he is doing it for money, or I hate him, he did force Rashford out, and I hate him because he does like Rasmus. And the question was, INEOS and the Glazers are ruining Man United. But there are these people out there who, it's almost, I wonder if they're, I wouldn't say they're on the payroll, but they are conversation distractors. That's what happens in our fan base. Like, we will never come together about what's wrong with this football club because there are always people in our fan base who distract the conversation, allowing the Glazers just to sit back and watch us argue amongst ourselves. And that is an amazing observation on the problems in this fan base. Because anytime somebody puts their head up and says, we need to do something about this, they get discredited for irrelevant reasons, and the conversation actually doesn't get had. So if you put your hand up and you say, why have Man United got 2 bits of land right in the middle of the regeneration and nobody's been talking about it, within a day it will be, Rashford shouldn't have been sold, or yeah, you're just doing this for this reason. And that's what people do. They won't have the proper conversation. And that's why we keep getting this whole, INEOS are doing their best. They've come into a difficult situation that the Glazers created, and they're doing their best. And yeah, they are raising ticket prices and they are sacking people, but they're doing their best. And then that becomes like almost the story. But then the story actually is, hold on a minute, they bailed the Glazers out and the Glazers still own the football club. What are you talking about? Oh, Forest fan. Yeah, you know, and that's what happens. And this is why nothing ever happens at this football club. I want to go back to what we were talking about there. Why is it Man United are approaching Luis and Cunha in December and not buying them in January because we haven't got any money? And what were we trying to do in January? We were trying to sell Garnacho. We were going to try and sell Garnacho to buy Cunha and Luis. What? It's literally 2 steps backwards, 1 step forward. What? How do you run a football club like that? Doesn't make any sense, does it? Somebody made a great question. Would you sign Harry Kane, Mark? I wanna pose this one. I mean, look, it's not beyond the realms of possibility. And it's a fair question, and it's a football-related question. Harry Kane, if he was available for £54 million in the summer transfer window, would you bring him to Manchester United? On one hand, there is no doubt that when it comes to strikers in world football, he's a little bit like Lewandowski. He is in the top 5 in the world. He is a top 5 in the world striker. He'd be 32 in the summer. For £54 million, I still think that's way too much money. People think I don't like Harry Kane. I do like Harry Kane, but what I would say about Harry Kane is that, and it might be a little bit disrespectful, but I would have dropped him from England in the Euros, and I would drop him from England for the World Cup because he doesn't fit what England need. And England have a lot of players like Cole Palmer, Phil Foden, Mainu, Saka, Anthony Gordon, a lot of creatives. And when you've got creatives like that, you need a striker who plays on the last man and gets in the penalty box and runs the channels. Ollie Watkins. Harry Kane wants to drop in and be another false 9. It doesn't work, that system. Manchester United in a Ruben Amorim system does not need a striker that drops in to an area where you've got 2 cams and 2 wide players. We need a striker. Harry Kane's not that player anymore. And he's not quick enough either. So I like Harry Kane, but he definitely doesn't suit a Ruben Amorim system at 32 years of age. He wants to drop in and be part of stuff. He wants to be part of the build-up, and he doesn't suit what Man United are all about, in my opinion. So I wouldn't go anywhere near him, despite the fact that he is, without doubt, a proven goal scorer. Also, where would he get the service from as well? Dan M says, bad owner, bad sale. The Glazers discounted other more credible offers than INEOS. They wanted to stay, and that's it. Thank you, Dan. We want to buy a new centre forward, but we're not even in the top 10 of crosses put into the box, says Ray. And Brandon says, at this point, I'm expecting 2 of Mainu and Garnacho and Collier to be sold. We are buying players like Heaven to sell on in 2 or 3 seasons. Glenius want us to be Brighton, says Brandon. You're a brave person, Brandon. I said this a few weeks ago and got absolutely rinsed because, again, the distractors out there. Well, I don't mind people who want to see a positive future under this regime. I don't mind that. But I think there are people out there, as I was saying before, distractors, discreditors, who can't actually give you an answer to the question you ask. So instead of answering the question, they try to discredit you in other ways. As I just explained. There are people out there still doing this for the Glazers and INEOS. And they are the same people who, when we say it's hard to see a way back, it looks really bleak, they will say, no, it's fine. Over the next 2 to 3 years, this is what INEOS are going to do and it's going to happen. But a quick history search on them or a memory search on them will tell you that these were the same people saying, we don't want state ownership. We want British ownership. We don't want money flooding into the club. We want to do it organically. And although Qatar were looking to buy all of the football club, Sir Jim Radcliffe will own all of the football club in 2026. I mean, I was reading an article the other day where somebody was actually in the replies saying, once Sir Jim gets the Glazers out, that's when he'll be able to do all the stuff he wants to do. Sir Jim Ratcliffe said at Christmas he hasn't got a plan to buy all of the football club. That was a myth put out by the distractors. At no point did INEOS ever say they had a pathway to buying the football club. It was a rumour started by pro-Glazer INEOS accounts on social media. There is no article, there is no comment, there is no evidence that INEOS ever had a pathway to buying the full club from the Glazers. The only evidence is that they're in a partnership with the Glazers with a minority ownership. There is no pathway to that, and yet it's almost fallen into the Man United fan base subculture, subconscious. That was a myth. That was an absolute myth. There is no evidence of it. It just went out there as a reason to try and get people to be pro-INEOS and Glazers. It never happened. And those same accounts and same journalists and same people are doing it again with the new one, which is, oh, I can see what they're doing. They're buying up loads of young players, so in 5 years' time, we'll have an amazing team. But I sort of agree with Brandon. We've just tried to sell Garnacho. We've mentioned selling Mainu. We will sell one of those players in the summer, I think, if we're not in Europe. And yet we're meant to believe that we're buying young players to build a team. I would lean more towards we're buying young players to sell them on at profit because it's the best way to get money into the football club. I might be wrong, but can you tell me I'm definitely wrong? I don't know. Let me answer this question from Martin Saunders. He says, what I don't understand is even if the Glazers are cash cow mercenaries, Sir Jim is a tycoon. Surely he knows you have to speculate to accumulate, or is his hands tied by Joel? I don't know enough about Sir Jim Ratcliffe's ownership model, mates, around other businesses. I know Nice has been chaotic. I know that obviously not all his sporting ventures have been successful, but they have laid out a very clear pathway for Manchester United that is about austerity. It's about cuts. Man United's strategy at the moment is cuts. Cut, save money, bring the wage bill down, and then we're not going to go back, are we? We're not going to go from having cutting our wage bill to the 6th best in the world, in the country, to going back to that again. We're never going back to that. So I think we're going from, I just don't see how it works. I don't see how that works. I think in sport, you're right, you've got to speculate to accumulate. I mean, look at Chelsea. They've spent so much money. In fact, actually, this is a good point to bring in. I want to read this. Swedish Rumble is a very good account. I've mentioned it before on Twitter, but they were basically quoting an article by Martin Samuel, who said that Manchester United's mission 21 is to deliver a 21st League title for the club by 2028. In their present state, they may as well target Mars. Basically, a lot of people just think it's a load of bullshit. But Swedish Rumble was basically saying that United has spent squad player money on squad players the last 3 years and recently signed some youth players. In total, Chelsea has spent more than 2 times on transfer fees during the period that United has. If United had signed Todibo, people would point at him and ask why the club isn't performing better despite signing top names. The same guy is now sat on West Ham's bench. And it's a great point. I wanted us to buy Todibo, but are we sort of being conned by the players that we buy? When you look, I said this a few weeks ago, when you look at Ugarte and you look at De Ligt and you look at Mazraoui, they are 3 players that without doubt have improved our team, which isn't very good, and they've been quite consistent. But if those 3 players were bought by Man City, Arsenal, Liverpool, Chelsea, would all 3 of them start? And these are 3 of our better players. I don't think they would. I think 1 or 2 of them might start for different. I mean, I don't think Ugarte would start for Liverpool. At the moment, he might start for Man City, but he wouldn't start for Arsenal. I don't think he'd start for Chelsea. Maybe Chelsea, but I don't think he necessarily would. De Ligt would he start for Man City? I mean, I personally would. Not for Arsenal, he wouldn't. Not for Liverpool, he wouldn't. Would he start for Chelsea? Maybe. Mazraoui, not going to start for Liverpool. Might start for Man City. Not going to start for Arsenal, I don't think, if Ben White's fit. And it was the other team, Chelsea. I don't know. And they're 3 of our better signings. I think it's a great point. When we were going to buy Todibo, I was really excited. We need a player like Todibo. He's actually a bench player for West Ham. And these are our glow-up signings. And that's the quality of signing that we're making now. They're not actually... We need players that start for Man City, Arsenal and Liverpool if we want to catch Man City, Arsenal and Liverpool. But the players we're buying as our big signings, I'm paying good money for them. Debatable whether they'd start for Arsenal, Liverpool or Man City. The club talk about marginal gains and it's utterly ridiculous. The competition in top football is very tough and it takes so much to get to the top. If there is a corner United can cut when building a team, it's been cut. Ollie had a complete mishmash. Ten Hag game plan was built on dynamic centre-backs who were comfortable on the ball. He got Martinez for 3/4 of a season and Evans and Maguire for the rest of his tenure. The change was made from Ten Hag to Amorim, which is about as big of a 180 you could ever realistically do in football. Amorim has got so few players to work with that suit his style of play. And this is a great point many of you have made. I mean, we brought a guy in and we couldn't have made a different, sharper direction turn as a football club, and then we haven't given him any of those players. Yet, Sir Jim Ratcliffe sat down and told the media that this was about what he was going to do. It wouldn't be about spending money. He made factually completely incorrect claims that it wouldn't be possible for United to spend more, that it would be about being best-in-class management and other nonsensical ideas. How can Man United make up miles of ground on Manchester City, Arsenal, Liverpool and co by bringing in best-in-class management personnel? Don't those clubs have them already? It can't give you a competitive edge. And this is something we've been discussing as well. Man United and INEOS constantly put stuff out there about strategic reviews, Mission 21, best in class, and completely ignore the fact that Liverpool, Man City, Arsenal, Chelsea will already be having those conversations about best in class. How do Man United recruit best in class when everyone else is already doing it as well? It's a myth. It's a myth to buy time. Oh, we're going to catch up by 2028, like Liverpool and everyone else are going to fuck off to the shops and just down tools. United can spend more money. Sorry, this is from Swedish Rumble. United can't spend more money, question mark. Complete nonsense. United factually has no cash and close to £1 billion in debt. On that debt, interest is paid. If you cash that in at the bank, you can pay people up front. United pay most of its transfer fees over 4 years. Is it good business to buy stuff and pay for them over 4 years? Football club's economy is not different than yours or mine in this regard. You just piss away a lot of money by buying things on credit. Investment in the academy doesn't even impact FFP, which City has utilised. The financial cutbacks United have made has impacted the academy. United is a club that never ever have utilised any levers to spend money. Someone like Todd Boehly could easily have spent £1 billion plus on transfers had he bought United instead of Chelsea. Why aren't people questioning this with Sir Jim Ratcliffe? And I think this goes back to a lot of, and that's a tweet from Swedish Rumble. People need to wake up and start asking questions. It's very difficult for the fans to do it because we don't have access to the club to do it. Journalists do. Why are journalists not asking these questions? Why are they focused on shitty conversations about strikers and not talking about the comparison between the way Todd Boehly has run Chelsea over the last 2 years and INEOS are running Manchester United? And whilst Todd Boehly was ridiculed for spending $2 billion in a short period, $2 billion in a short period of time, journalists are more than happy to write Man United haven't got any money, PSR, without scratching the surface and finding the truth. It's fantasy land. Their pathway to success is pure fantasy, and it's riddled with holes, but it gets fed out to us as propaganda. Jim Ratcliffe has done nothing for Man United. His partial ownership is a mistake, says LG. Dan Am says, bad owners, bad sale. Look, I think we can keep conversing about this, and I think we need to do it. But the only way to really make it impact is when you get stories like that this morning, where Fabrizio Romano is saying Man United approached Douglas Luiz and Cunha to sign them in January and then had no money. Now, 2 years ago, if Todd Boehly was in charge of Man United, we'd have Cunha, we'd have Douglas Luiz, and we'd probably have a couple of other players. This myth that Man United can't generate money to spend is a joke. It's an absolute joke. Man United can't spend money. Man United won't spend money. That's the problem. It's not that we can't spend money. We can't spend money in the parameters of how we're being run. Therefore, we won't spend money. As we've already broken down, and it's amazing because you do a video a couple of weeks ago about PSR and how we don't need to sell Garnacho, we don't need to sell Mainu, we just need to do something about the debt because we're paying so much in interest on the debt that it's killing our spend. Has that been picked up by anybody? Has it? Bollocks. Because they want to distract. I know what happens at Man United. They're fully aware of what's being said on this channel. And there will be conversations about, right, what can we do to distract that? Because they're actually nailing quite this is problematic for us. This is problematic PR for us. How do we move the conversation onto something else? Can we get another question asked of Amorim about Rashford in the press conference? Don't for 1 minute think that Manchester United and journalists aren't in little WhatsApp groups talking about, could you ask a question about this? Could you avoid talking about that? And we'll give you this. If you're not aware of that world, where have you been? Happens in politics, happens in sport. It's not that we're not hitting the target on the problems at Man United. It's just that you're the only ones hitting the target. And as long as you're the only ones hitting the target and no one else picks up on that, it will just get buried and distracted away. And this is what keeps happening at Manchester United. There's been very good conversations about the Glazer ownership. And that's why when a book comes out or a video comes out, people will go, everyone needs to watch this. Fans will watch it, go, it's an absolute outrage. But does it ever get picked up by the mainstream? Is there ever... look, I'm not a big fan of Simon Jordan, but at least he did that video the other day saying, I think Sir David Brailsford's a bluffer. I think he's talking out of his arse, basically. And it helps. It does help. Anyway, look, enough for the morning show. It's a great day today. It's the Super Bowl. I can't wait for it. Also, Rashford. We might get to see Rashford on That's Football at Villa against Spurs. We have got an 8 o'clock show tonight. As I said, legendary Super Bowl stream tonight. Don't miss that. But we will be back at 8 o'clock on here. And also, why is that Taka still talking about stuff that we're not actually doing at the moment? I don't know what that's all about. Yeah, great show this morning. Thank you for all your comments. Make sure you subscribe, bottom right-hand corner. Tickets for the live show, Dublin, Wednesday the 19th of March, smack in the middle of the international break. No excuses not to be there. Some very special guests going to be there. Going to be a great night, smack in the middle of Dublin. Get your tickets while you can. Scan the QR code or go through the link in the description. Thanks everyone for watching. Really enjoyed the conversation this morning. 60% of you wouldn't sign Harry Kane. 40% of you would. Where was Robert McCormack? Botting, hey? Thanks for watching. Take care. You'll see what snacks I've got, John, at 11 o'clock tonight. I've got some crackers. Not literal crackers. I've got like sweets, chocolate, the lot. Can't wait. I'm sort of not eating today so that I can binge later.